Welcome to the Caregiver Circle podcast, where caregivers connect, share, and feel seen. Join hosts Karen McKevitt and Meredith Stewart each week for conversations, support, and encouragement designed to help you navigate the caregiving journey with confidence, compassion, and community. This is a space built for caregivers, one rooted in connection, understanding, and support. Welcome to the Caregiver Circle.
Welcome to the Caregiver Circle. I'm Karen McKevitt.
And I'm Meredith Stewart.
And we created this podcast because we know caregiving can feel overwhelming, emotional, and even isolating. We wanted to create this space for supportive conversations that we wish we had, and now we want to give more caregivers access to. Together, we'll talk honestly about caregiving, emotional wellness, burnout, advocacy, resilience, and all of those moments that sometimes go unseen. So, Meredith, I was thinking about our podcast, and I remember thinking about you. Years ago, we connected because we were on the same health plan, and I knew I was struggling, and we had the same health coach. She connected us and said, Meredith has been on this journey. I really think you need to talk. Do you happen to remember, and this is going like several years ago, do you remember what you told me that week?
I don't, and I'm kind of afraid to hear what I might have said.
I think the words were, the first week I thought I was going to die.
Oh, yes. Yes, I did.
And you know, the beauty part of that honesty is that's actually what started our beautiful friendship. And through the years of health plans and side gigs and all of this, we have built a beautiful online friendship. And, you know, one of the things that I thought of when thinking about how this podcast needs to go forward is that when we went Facebook public about our situation, you were the very first person that reached out. So here I get to say publicly, thank you for just being amazing and the human that you are.
You're welcome. Caregiving is one of those things that if you know, you know. So I definitely knew a reach out was called for.
And I think that leads really, really nicely into the conversation that we're going to have today. You've been on this caregiving journey a lot longer than me. So before we jump into connection and all of that, what made you jump at the chance of joining me on this podcast? I'm just kind of curious to see, what kind of made you just kind of jump in.
I think the biggest reason is caregiving's a lonely journey. You find yourself becoming isolated. If you're not a caregiver, you really don't understand what goes into it. And those friends, those people, they fall away. For me, I left my career and started working a different career from home. And so not only were my friends busy with their kids and their lives, but my coworkers who, I was friendly with, they were still in their careers. And so I was very isolated. I found myself alone and had to reach out online because I didn't know anybody else that was in the situation that I was in. So I think it's really important that caregivers at all stages, they know that they're supported, that there are others out there going through the same thing. And even if it's looking up, how did somebody else get through this? How did somebody else handle that? Is this something that usually happens, kind of a thing? I think that's important.
And that's really striking because there's a grief among all of those transitions because life looked very different before caregiving and looks very different now. And, we're in very different situations. We're very different stages of our lives. I've got children. I know you're caring for your mom. I'm doing my spouse. And then you look online and there's no one size fits all for your particular situation. I was talking to a caregiver friend the other day who's also caring for a spouse. And she said to me, there's just not the right resources for me. And I know your situation doesn't include dementia, but I'm going to kind of guess that when you look online, lot of a lot of parent caregiving is dementia related.
That is exactly right. Generally, when the children start taking care of their parents, that's why they've gotten on an age. And in my situation, it was my mom became paralyzed. And so she's fully dependent upon me. And so that wasn't out there. I ended up having to search out spinal cord injury groups. And that was where I felt more like I fit in because I couldn't relate to those general children as caregiver to parent groups. That's not where I was. And I love that you said there's a grief involved with that because that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And people don't see that. You grieve that. And I'm 6 years in and I'm still grieving some of those things that and I wouldn't give up, would not change my life for anything. If I can keep my mom at home, that's what I'm gonna do. But you do grieve all of that. This isn't the life that I thought I was gonna have at this stage, but I wouldn't give it up for anything, but I absolutely grieve what was or what could have been. So I like that you said that.
Hmm. That was all really, really touching, Meredith. And You know, I can relate to looking for the support groups online and, I think I joined an AARP support group, not because I'm at that age yet, but because I figured that's gonna be the closest thing, and none of it was relevant. None of it was, me-centric, and, here I am taking care of my person, and there just wasn't the right support for me. I wasn't worried about my person, I was worried about me. This is hard stuff. And, you don't know how long the road is going to be.
Mhm. Well, and I think that you have to take care of yourself and you have to look out for yourself because you can't fully be there for your person if you're overwhelmed and you're not I you have to there comes a point when you have to be a little bit selfish in caregiving because if you're not, then you can't be there fully and give them what they need. So, I think we grasp for what we think might help, and it's really hard to find.
And I like that you say that you sometimes have to be selfish because that's the part that I know I personally struggle with because I am not a selfish person by nature. So to say that I need something and I have to have it, and it's almost like having a temper tantrum as a 4-year-old. I need this. It feels very disingenuous to who I am as a person. So to have those me moments, I know I personally struggle with that. So I appreciate you saying that there is a selfishness that has to be there.
Same. I am absolutely the same way. And I had to go to therapy after becoming a caregiver to learn that, to learn that I had to learn how to take care of me in order to be the best caregiver that I could be for my mom. I just got back from vacation. That's hard to do, but I know I get to the point where I have to for both of our sakes. We both need some time away, and my mom needs some time with my brother where I'm not there because he's in and out, not here as much, and I'm always here when he's here. So it does both of us good. We both get anxious when that time comes for me to leave, but it's good for both of us.
That's amazing. But today
Sure.
I do want to focus on connections. I know for me, when all of our issues cropped up, I was absolutely living by the text messages. I wasn't in a position to pick up the phone all the time and, Group messages were kind of the best for me because I could get that information all at once.
Mhm.
And with the exception of a handful of people, the text worked perfectly. But we've both said it already. Caregiving can be very isolating.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that. I know I'm personally a little bit of a lone wolf. I like to just kind of be in control and take care of all of those little items. I want the to-do list. I want to make sure it's done my way. Maybe it's perfectionist qualities. What has been your experience with connection with others? How do you avoid some of that isolation?
I'm not very good at it. Even all these years in. I've gotten better at it, but part of that is that my mom has also gotten better with acceptance and starting to let people in more. So that has helped with me being able to connect more through her. Before, she didn't want anybody else taking care of her. So I wasn't connecting with anyone on that end, and there wasn't time to connect personally with anybody. But I think as time has gone on, we're both getting better at that, but it's still a struggle because, like I said before, if you're not a caregiver, and especially if you're not a full-time caregiver, where your life is completely turned upside down, you don't understand. And so it's hard to have a connection with somebody that doesn't understand that. People have finally quit calling me to go do things because they know I can't. So that was an adjustment. But I can still have a phone conversation with somebody or I can have that text conversation with somebody. Mm. It's that's just something that I really don't know what the answer is to it. I don't know where to fall with that. Where's the happy medium with connecting with people, but still feeling isolated because they don't understand the situation.
When you say they've stopped asking you, "Can you go out and do these things?" You know, that has to also come with a little bit of pain because these were things that you once would have enjoyed to do. And now, the caregiver, I think, is so misunderstood because there's so much. There's the weight of the world kind of on your shoulders. You're caring for another cognitively able person who has thoughts and abilities, and we're not just sitting here, doing the things that you do for your person. And like we said earlier, still grieving the life we had. We'd still love to be able to do those and connect, but now it's just different.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the things that do work for you. You said the phone calls definitely help. Tell me about the community of people that you have in your caregiving circle. You've mentioned your brother.
Mhm. My brother works away, but he comes in and out on weekends. My mom, I I am very lucky to have an aunt and cousin who live like a mile away. So when I do go on vacation, they come in and do all of the things that my brother doesn't want to have to do for his mom. So that has been tremendous. And then my mom has a couple of sisters who, if they're able to, they will come and sit with my mom. And, and I have that whole perfectionist problem with letting anybody. I feel like my mom is my responsibility. She's not anybody else's responsibility. So there's things that go along with, I'm good with people coming in and sitting and talking with her and, helping her pass time. But the other things, I feel like that's my responsibility and I shouldn't be pushing that off. So even all these years in, I have not figured that out. And I know it's important that I need to, but that's hard. She has a couple friends who come in and spend some time and visit with her, and I think she's more comfortable with people coming here. She's not as comfortable being in public. That kind of comes and goes for her. Sometimes she's more comfortable than others, but she prefers them coming here. So those few people that will still come here and visit with her That's been huge. And so those are the people now that are my community. I still have a friend who comes. We've been friends forever, and now she's married into my family, and she'll come and bring her kids, and that's huge for my mom too. So definitely our communities have kind of now are coming to be one, really. I mean, for lack of a better word, because where I go, she goes, and where she goes, I go, kind of a thing now.
And you're this dynamic duo together.
That's right.
See, and this is what's fascinating about our two stories because ours couldn't be more different. I live in a town, I have my chosen family. My blood family lives all over the country. So, there's no one that I've grown up with that's within an hour of us. So, caring for your spouse, I have a child who lives down in Florida and I needed to go see her. It was kind of planned before my husband was ill. And I said, okay, we'll do this. And that kept getting pushed until I couldn't push it anymore. And I was away for 36 hours. That's how long I was with my daughter. And, my 17-year-old son was taking care of his dad. Now, luckily, the basics were handled. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to do all this. But we were braced. And, I had a list of people that, oh, hey, can you go and check if, so it was very, very different. I know I personally was living on the text messages, the check-ins, it was winter when all of our stuff happened. We had, snow that kind of turned into this concrete stuff. So everybody was calling it snowcrete. And, so we're dealing with the outside elements and our situation. So it really was those text messages from friends. Hey, checking in. What do you need? I didn't know what I needed. I was in survival mode. But it was truly those, hey, I just wanted to say hi. How are you? Like those were the things that got me through. And now we're past that survival mode. And part of his physical therapy is that we need to walk and do things like it's forced physical therapy. So now I'm grateful that I know I don't have to be, at the beck and call 24/7, still a lot of the day. But now we're able to go out and do things and be around other people. So for us, having those connections with each other, but then with the outside world is kind of what's surviving.
Definitely. I can, yeah, definitely see that. So that's great that you're able to go now and do some things together.
It's relieving.
Yeah. 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 Because you're isolated when you're at home. There's not, you know, I, I laugh at my mom because her friends are on YouTube now. She, she has certain people she watches on YouTube, and I laugh because I'm like, those are your friends. It's a different world. It's definitely a different world.
It absolutely is. And, I'm looking at some of the notes that I kind of jotted down so that, we had some things to chat about today. And, one of the things that I quoted for myself was support isn't a luxury for caregivers, it's part of sustainability. And I think that's just so important. And I think, both of us have definitely touched on that because I know when we're isolated and in the throes of this caregiving journey, there's guilt, there's frustration, there's exhaustion, there's grief, there's uncertainty. We don't know how long we're on this caregiving journey. A doctor may say, this is your path, but until you live it, we don't know what it truly is. And that's,
Right.
recovery because of injury or life sustaining. No one knows what tomorrow is going to hold. So I think it's so important for others in our situation to just know these feelings are so, so normal, I think.
Absolutely. That you just nailed it right there with that because there's a lot of things that cross your mind and you feel terrible about it. And you're not alone. It is normal. And I know I keep going back to if you're not a caregiver, you don't understand that, but it's true. And I think that's why it's so important that we're here today and that we continue on so that we can support each other and we can support others and people they start caregivers start understanding that it's normal.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I definitely came through, early on in our journey, thank goodness, someone reminded me that caregiving is just a pure act of love.
Oh,
I turn around and every time I've shared our situation, I've heard people share, "Oh, I'm a caregiver for my mother, I'm a caregiver for my aunt, I'm a caregiver for," um, and I think I actually read this statistic. 1 in 4 people will become a caregiver in their lives.
wow.
Isn't that incredible? Like,
Well,
I know I personally never expected it at my age, and, mine may be temporary only to come back again. I don't know what the future holds, but, it's kind of an incredible journey. So, I think the fact that we're doing this, I think, is so important. I think I wanna make sure that fellow caregivers are understanding their feelings are normal and valid and, they get the support that they need.
yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. This has been an amazing conversation that I'm sure we could go on for hours and hours. I want to keep these conversations bite-sized because we know other caregivers are throwing their AirPods in their ears and saying, "I only have a few minutes." Meredith, we got through episode 1.
Yay.
It's amazing. I think we're gonna do such great things for this community, and to our audience, thank you for joining the Caregiver Circle. The Caregiver Circle is a podcast of 2 friends providing a place for connection, education, encouragement, and shared experiences. As caregivers, advocates, and lifelong learners, we share stories, resources, and conversations that have helped us along the way, with the hope that they may help you too. While we strive to share helpful information, the content of this podcast is not intended to replace professional medical, legal, financial, or mental health advice. Please consult qualified professionals regarding your specific situation and needs.